and I was accepted to South Carolina State College at the time. Now it's a university. Went to South Carolina State University in 61 and did well, you know, pretty much. I think I graduated 4th in the class or something like that. Became a Delta. And the 3rd year in, when I was a junior, in 1963, 64, the King Marches started. And there was a bowling alley in South Carolina, in Orangeburg, that had a sign, and it was for whites only. And we crossed the tracks, and we went to this church. All of us went to the church, and they shared the whole nonviolence aspect of the march. They told us that you were not to respond in a violent way, and we that the goal was to remove this white sign from the bowling alley. Now, when I think back and reflect on that, really, none of us really bowled. And it really wasn't about getting into the bowling alley. It was about the right to have access. That if I wanted to bowl, I could bowl in this bowling alley. So we went on a march, and we were downtown Orangeburg, and of course the police came and they arrested all of us. And that particular night we went to this place that they call the Pink Castle. And I have pictures of that place, and it was a beautiful place. It was a Victorian style facility, and it was beautiful on the outside. But one of the other activities that happen in the South on a regular basis, and in Newberry also, on the weekends, if African American men, I think frustrated by their fate in life, were weekend alcoholics when they had money. And if you were caught drunk, and you didn't have to be disorderly, but if they saw that you were, had too much alcohol, they would throw you in jail, in the city jail. And Orangeburg had the same policy. So I looked at the place, it looked great, and then we got inside, and it was infested with urine, and where men had thrown up on the cots, and I don't remember seeing any sheets or anything. And I was very lucky because I found a table, and I held onto my table, and I was able to sleep on this table and not sleep in the cells. The cell block was pretty much open to us. So we were there, I think, a couple of days, and they let us out because there were just too many of us. The goal of the King Marches, of course, was to fill the jails. And once you were out of jail, you would go back, get at another march, and go to jail again. And the goal was to have so many people in those jails that they would not be able to handle it. So we would just be overcapacitated. So they let us out. And through the grapevine, we had heard that, and this is going to sound crazy, I think when you're a student, I don't know if you're really thinking or not. The one thing I didn't know is that I wasn't going to tell my parents that I was going to jail, because they were just so excited about me being in college. I knew that they would be very upset about that. So the word was that if you were lucky, you would be able to go to prison. Because in prison, you had clean sheets and you had your own cell. So the goal, really the goal was, let's hope they take us to prison and not back to the White Castle. So on the second march, instead of going to the cell, they threw us into a basement. And we pretty much slept on that concrete floor that night. And the next morning, we heard the bus. And the bus rolled up, and it said, South Carolina Penitentiary, Columbia, South Carolina. And we cheered, and we were just excited. We rushed the door because nobody wanted to be left off the bus. And we got on this bus, and we were singing on our way there, and we got there, and there it was. Sure enough, we had cells, and it was open. I learned how to play bid whist. We played bid whist. Got up every morning, we had real food instead of having that food brought to us in a big pail. Bologna sandwiches. The prisoners were close to us, but not quite with us, but we would see them in the morning. So we had a good time. I remember a priest came to visit us, a white priest, and he didn't know what to say to us, so he gave us all cigarettes. And so that's how I learned how to smoke, because the priest gave us cigarettes. He was just kind of uncomfortable. He didn't know what to do, so we took the cigarettes, and we had a good time. Then the other silly thing was that, not silly, just naivete, we also had heard that you could get a number, a prison number, and your own picture. And so we wanted that. And they said, well, it was showing how effective the movement was, because they had decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. They had run out of, it's like, this is a waste of time because we just keep getting this overflow of kids and everything. So that was the march that took place. I graduated from South Carolina State in 1965. In 1968, the thing about the South and how that whole thing ran was that, and I may be answering some of your questions in advance, I don't know, but Brown versus Board of Education, as you know, happened in 1954, 55. There was Brown 1 and Brown 2. And I sometimes, when I'm doing workshops, I refer to myself as a brown baby, because I grew up during that period of time. But Brown was a desegregation of public schools, because Linda Brown, like me, lived close to a white school. She was not able to attend. And her father, and there were really about 20 cases, I'm told, I think it was Topeka, Kansas, Brown. And they had this, because of Brown, Thurgood Marshall and various people decided, that particular case, decided that separate was not quite equal. And because of that, they desegregated school. But what most of us don't realize is that in 1954, although Brown took place, the law was made. The law said that we should integrate, but the South did not. Neither did my school system. So if you ask, what did Brown mean? It didn't mean a thing, because nothing changed. We were all still going to the same black schools, and obviously in 1961, I was going to an all-black college. I went to an all-black high school and graduated in 61. We were just still separate but equal, because in Brown there was a clause, and I think it was something like, with all deliberate speed, something to that. And so whites used that all deliberate speed to mean whatever they wanted it to mean, and they took their time. They would make little gestures, but they really did not, desegregate. So by 1965 and 64, 65, the Civil Rights Act came in 1964, and it forced these schools to really integrate. And the bowling alley that we marched for took down the sign, but they still didn't let blacks in. They just removed the sign. So in 1968, students from South Carolina State went on the march again. And I think that you're so naive about that. I think back now how dangerous it was, because in 1968, when those students went on that second march to desegregate the bowling alley, they were met with policemen and gunfire, and 3 students were killed. One of the young men killed was not a student. He was his mother worked in the cafeteria on campus, and he was just walking across the campus. going to his mother's workplace, and he was killed, and 2 other students were killed. There was a trial, but none of the policemen were found guilty, and nothing really happened as a result. And it's called the Orangeburg Massacre. It's kind of like the Kent State massacre. Most people know about Kent State. Very few people know about the Orangeburg Massacre. But there are signs there now noting the spot where this really took place. Kids were shot in the back of their heels as they were running away. About 27 students were injured, and 3 students were killed. And that was during a time where you were really getting into a little bit more of the Black Power movement, and some of that was moving into South Carolina State, and the police, and they were concerned that there was this element of people coming in, and so that was their justification for shooting those particular students. So that was my desegregation of living in the South, and from there I moved to Illinois.
So tell us a little bit what it was like, now you've come from the South, going up north. Was it different? Was it the same?
I was so naive. You know, I wanted to be a maid in New York. So I was pretty much naive. And going back on that story about being a maid in New York, my sister did become a maid in New York. And part of my tuition that I was not able to work because of my loan, she actually paid my room and board as a maid in New York. And every summer I worked in